Welcome to NNN News, the only unbiased, unfiltered, unplugged news podcast. This is a bi-weekly podcast where we're going to be covering current events as well as doing deep dives into more obscure topics that we're very interested in. As always, I am joined by my good friend and co-host, Lindsey Croft.
Hey up. Don't forget to tell them about the Twitter as well.
Yes, we have a Twitter. Link will be in the description below, of course. Make sure to follow that to stay updated on information regarding the show, as well as some debate polls. More information on that later.
Every show will have a debate between Norm and whichever miscreants are bold enough to debate approved journalists. However, we also have a more pleasant guest segment earlier on in the show. This week we have my cousin and approved confidant, Lindsey.
Yeah, and of course, timestamps for all these segments will be in the description below. But enough blabbering. Let's get into the news. If today's video seems a little different or weird than our usual collabs with Nevile, that's because Discord is currently oppressing us and our video streams just aren't working. So today, Nevile will just be a little picture. However, in the next episode, you can expect him to be back in his full glory. We also have a very special guest with us today, Lindsey Croft, writer for NPC Daily, very active on the Discord. Please say hi, Lindsey.
I'm just an intern.
Just an intern, but one of the best interns I've ever seen. I mean, hardworking. I think you could really be a congresswoman one day. I think you have the gusto.
Oh no, that's Congress.
That's what I aspire to.
Mm-hmm.
Person of Congress.
Oh, thank you, Neville, for correcting me. I always, that's one of those moments where I'm just not still with it. But without further ado, let's get into the recent news. Have you guys heard about this thing with the Indiana schools where they already started back on campus in August? I mean, this news story is from August 3rd, and people are already getting sent home with COVID. I mean, isn't that just grotesque? Like, would we need a better example of why we need to just not send kids to school?
What do you expect, though?
I mean, who should be responsible for this?
Yeah. If I may interrupt.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Okay, my position. Thank you. Quiet, Nev. Okay, my position on this has always been that if the kids have to go to school, Donald Trump has to go to prison.
Absolutely, yes.
Wow, that really came very strong out of the gate. But I think you make a great point. I mean,
I do.
The fact is, everyone knew this was going to happen. We knew that when kids went back to school, we were going to get more positive COVID tests, and this is in Indiana, and it's already proving our point, right? But you know what the worst part is? This kid's parents were already sort of a little suspicious that he had COVID and got him tested, but they sent him to school anyway before the test results came in. I mean, what should happen to these parents? They're complicit.
I believe that this is a result of the undoubtedly.
I mean, Neville, I'm sorry. Excuse me, Neville.
I'm terribly sorry, cousin. Neville. Please go ahead.
They need to take the children away from the parents, okay? Yeah, that they're absolutely complicit. And, like I always say, and I've been saying this all along, it takes a village to raise the children. Why were these kids with their parents anyway? You tell me that, Norm. You tell me.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So you think that
if Hillary had been president, this never would have happened.
Okay, so what you're saying is that we should have the kids be raised by the state because they would be safer?
It's a preventative measure. It's a preventative measure. Yes, absolutely.
See, I feel like if there was ever a time to do that, I think now with the whole COVID virus pandemic would really be the time to, because clearly these parents don't know how to handle their kids.
This is the time. We are facing an existential threat. This is an existential threat. Absolutely. Yeah. Just like climate change, just like the entire Trump presidency. This is an existential threat.
Well, once Joe Biden gets in power, I doubt we will be seeing anything like this anymore.
I mean, I'm sure like November 4th, it'll be over. That's sort of a given.
Yeah, and the question is, what can we do to even survive that long? I mean, with COVID out there, what do you think our likelihoods of surviving till November 4th even are?
I mean, the only thing that comes to mind is to impeach him again.
That's a good point. I really think we should consider that. I mean, it's so grotesque to me. Like, also another story from Georgia, same headline. different place. 260 of their employees in the school district in Georgia were positive with COVID. I mean, it's just grotesque how unprepared we are as a country.
Unbelievable.
You know what my suspicion about that is? I reckon it was the white students that intentionally brought the virus in to oppress the students of color.
I mean, students of color are disproportionately affected. This is just another genocide being perpetuated by the Trump administration. This is no different than the brown children in cages.
Wow.
They've let the brown children out of their cages so they can get COVID.
That's an interesting angle. I never really thought about how the disproportionate way it affects POCs. I mean, I'd read about that, but
they've expanded upon the LatinX genocide.
It just goes to show how racist the coronavirus has been weaponized to be. We live in very scary times.
We all know how it got started. I mean, China's been very clear about that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it was.
It came from
the United States.
That's exactly.
I mean, China. China is reporting this. Iran is reporting this. Why isn't the American media reporting this?
Well,
obviously
they're under the influence of Trump,
and they're afraid, right? They're
terrified. I mean, this is an oppressive, fascist, totalitarian regime. I mean, we've seen what happens to people that speak up against Trump. It's.
Our lives are in very danger right now, even just talking about this. We could be swiped up by unidentified stormtroopers at any moment.
My internet got taken down recently.
And I think we understand why. I think at this point, it's pretty clear why. Because we're all at risk here.
Because they're just afraid of people who speak truth to power.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
They really are. And I mean, I don't know if there's a ton of ways we can really fix that. I think one of the ways is finding chances to invest in sort of black-owned businesses or POC.
Or investigate. Investigate. We need more investigations, and that is exactly what Adam Schiff is trying to do. That man is a hero. And I just hope that he's under constant security, because you have no idea what Trump could be trying right now. I mean, he could send his stormtroopers after Congress at any time and just take power.
I think we need to find a way to get past this. And I think the only way that I can think of is to invest in black-owned businesses. And luckily, there's a group that's helping make that more possible. I mean, the civil rights organization, the NCAAP, has sort of set up this minority empowerment ETF. So you can invest in this, and you're in one fell swoop, you're helping all these black-owned businesses. I mean, do you think?
Are they the right kind of black-owned businesses, though?
Yeah, actually, they are. They've actually taken some steps already. So they originally had a Starbucks in because they had showed some initial support for BLM. However, there was an issue. Welcome back, Eva. There was an issue with Starbucks where a POC was being denied service at one of the locations, and just because of one infraction across an entire major company, they removed them from the stock. So they're very active in making sure the stock stays clean. I mean, do you think there's going to be this is going to be a good stock to invest in, Lindsey? What are your thoughts?
I like the concept in theory, but I mean, I really think that this needs to be policed a little bit more aggressively. Like, what's to stop somebody like, I don't know, Kanye West from step for this? I mean, technically, he is racially black. Are they differentiating between racial blackness and political blackness?
Oh, this is definitely a stock. I mean, just looking at the sort of this article here, it's definitely a stock that's more about political blackness.
So you don't have to worry about like accidentally investing in Uncle Tom-owned businesses?
Yes, they don't say that verbatim in the article, but they do imply it. That
is there a House Negro clause or anything?
No, I didn't see anything about that.
That's the problem. That's the problem. What's to stop racially black people from getting mixed up in here? I mean, they really need to examine very closely the ideological leanings of these business owners.
Mm-hmm.
There's another issue I found present, that while it's nice on paper, but at the end of the day, it's still endorsing capitalism, which I find to be incredibly toxic and incredibly dangerous. You're still feeding into the Trump regime's slithering tentacles by doing this.
You make a really good point. I'm so proud of you, Nev.
Yeah,
thank you for adding that to the conversation.
Yeah,
Really.
that's a really great point. Honestly, I hadn't even considered the effect that capitalism sort of has. I mean, so the question is,
But you know, even an even better point than the one that Neville just made, though,
mhm,
it's the question of racial discrimination. What's to stop if we are going to be going with? I mean, and ideally this would be for politically black people.
mhm.
What about those of us who are politically black but not racially black? Are we going to be discriminated against?
Well, I I think we really need to ask these questions. Lindsey, do you know anyone who's really a stock market guru or anything?
I mean, to be honest, I don't really know a lot of people who have their own money. Most of us, we receive financial assistance from one source or another,
Hmm.
usually blood relative. Um, I I don't know. Maybe we could ask Dustin's grandma. I know she's pretty much the one who funds Quinn's bail every time the pigs pick her up. So yeah, we should get
We,
Dustin's grandmother on here at some
well,
point.
we'll have to get in contact with her to
Oh,
Yeah,
sort of see
if
her
I made
point on that.
if I may add another point as well,
Okay.
they're doing it for black stocks. But what about other oppressed groups? Like you could have Islamic stocks, you could have JLBT
Oh,
stocks.
that's a good point. I mean, can can we not have this be more broad towards sort of all oppressed peoples and
Would we want to
non-persons as
make it
well?
Exactly.
fully inclusive, or would we want to, give each group its own sort of safe little stock space? I mean, I personally, if I had any money of my own, um, I absolutely would invest in a Muslim X stock.
Hmm.
And after that, I'd probably go for the LGBTQIAP plus stock. But, I mean, you got to prioritize these things.
All right. Tell me what you guys think about this. Capitalism is bad, so we abolish the stock market, but we raise up and as these sort of racial stocks or these community stocks for people who are oppressed peoples, so you can financially support them to sort of help them survive in this capitalist system.
Are you talking about like livestock here?
No, 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 very much not that. Like,
Oh, okay.
I'm speaking, of course, about like financial,
Oh,
like
yeah.
this
Right.
article here explains with this EFT or ETF where you pay into one thing and it helps a bunch of people of a particular race, creed, gender identity, or so have it, whatever.
Yeah, I don't think oppressed minorities should be raised as livestock.
Yeah, I can agree with that wholeheartedly. I think it's a pretty agreeable
That's
thing.
that's kind of capitalistic too.
Hmm.
In
And
this
that's what we're trying to get
incredibly
away from.
in this very dangerous and uncertain kind of times that we live in, I think as well we should start increasing the taxes on white people, so that way those can be used to support oppressed, marginalized groups that are struggling in the Trump regime,
I
and
mean,
hopefully we'll see that in Joe Biden's.
didn't Bernie already propose that? And he's pretty much he's working with the Biden campaign at this point. So I mean, maybe we will get that. I'm sure we will.
Yeah, on that topic, who would you want to see as a Biden running mate?
Well, I mean, everyone's talking about how it needs to be a woman of color.
Hmm.
Um, I I don't know if that's necessarily the best bet because there are people who are racially black but not politically black who could possibly slip in there. And I know there's all this talk about Kamala Harris being his running mate. And you know, I just feel like she's coming from a place of privilege. I really do. I would much rather see someone like Stacey Abrams take it, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think that there's just too much uh, negative influence coming in there. Um, I just don't see it happening. I think that Stacey Abrams has just been too racially discriminated against, even within her own party. I
Interesting.
mean, you saw how she's been treated.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, she put herself out there. She made it absolutely clear how much she wants to be vice president. Those amazing photo ops, and she's pretty much just fallen from the spotlight. I mean, the media is currently all about Kamala Harris. And I feel like as a member of the mainstream media to some extent, I feel like we've failed the American people. I feel like we have a duty to put forth the best candidates for the job, so that the American people who look to us for guidance will know to support them. And I think that early on, we'd gotten off to a good start. I know there was talk of a woman of color like Elizabeth Warren. I'd settle for Elizabeth Warren.
That's a very good choice.
Abrams, but Kamala Harris, I mean, come on, she is such a cop.
Lindsey, we didn't fail the American people. The American people failed us.
That is probably one of the most intelligent things I've ever heard you say, Neville.
Yeah, I mean, great job work on that one.
Yeah.
The thing that scares me coming into this new election is the whole deepfake thing. I mean, have you guys seen this video of Nancy Pelosi's doctored video where people are implying that she's under the influence of alcohol during a speech? I mean, can you think of something more gross than to sort of, imply someone is drunk? I mean, this is just such clear-cut libel, and no one's taking it to court.
Actually, I can think of something that's even more gross and upsetting. These conspiracy theories about Joe Biden sunsetting or having Alzheimer's or something, wacky like that. I mean, the man's a spring chicken. He is as mentally fit as he ever was, and he's going to be our next president of the United States. I mean, this is an attack on the American people. Mm-hmm. It really is.
Yeah, and I think something kind of interesting about that. A lot of times when I see these videos that people send me, because of course they send me these videos of like, oh, this is Joe Biden being kooky. Like usually those are doctored videos, 9 out of 10 times, and in the 10th time they're just misquoting something out of a larger clip.
Exactly.
Or
he's taking what he says out of context.
He's such a joker sometimes. I mean, they take things out of context.
Yeah.
Like did you hear the one the other day? He said something. What was it that he said? Let me pull this up. Unlike the African American community, with notable exceptions, the Latino community is incredibly diverse, with incredibly different attitudes about different things. I mean, he straight out said that. I think maybe he could have phrased it a little better, like maybe said the LatinX community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I feel like he was making a really good point. And mm-hmm. Now you're having all these right-wing trolls come out and saying that, what he meant by unlike the African American community, it's like implying like the African American community is not diverse like the Latino.
Let me pull that up on screen actually, because
they're all the same. They all think the same.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they take his words out of context, Or what was another one recently when he accused that black man or suggested that black man might be on cocaine, in response to the question about his own cognitive abilities. I mean, mm-hmm. Clearly he was just joking around. And what was the other one that's been blown out of proportion?
The corn pop, or
the idea that if you're not voting for him, if you're not voting for him, then you're not black. I mean, again, this goes back to the question of racial blackness versus political blackness. Mm-hmm. He was not trying to erase anybody's racial identity. Okay, he was specifically addressing the question of political identity. Yeah. And clearly, if you do not vote for the Democratic candidate, the candidate for the party of black people, then you are not politically black. That's mm-hmm. all he was saying. And it just got taken so far out of context. And these smears really alarm me. I really think that we need to do more to police the speech of these right-wingers.
Yeah, and actually, exactly. I have the clip right here that you were talking about earlier, so I'm just going to play that real quick. Okay.
What you all know, but most people don't know, unlike the African American community, with notable exceptions, the Latino community is an incredibly diverse community with incredibly different attitudes about different things. What you all know, but...
Okay, I just played the video for everyone. Yeah, I mean, I think if you watch the video, first off, kind of low quality, so it might be a fake. It might be one of the deep fakes. That's a possibility. Another thing is, I think people are clearly just taking what he's saying out of context. I'm just to parrot what you were saying earlier, Lindsey. It's really it's disgusting to see something like this. They really do.
My take on it is, I think that Biden was referring to, in terms of diversity, the African Americans who support Trump, because at the end of the day, they're not diverse. They all think the same. They're not individuals. They all just have this same intrinsic belief that Trump is their god. And
Yeah,
it's terrifying. They're in a cult, essentially.
I think that's one of the things.
And if you support Trump, you are not black. That's
yeah,
a fact.
Exactly.
Black, of course, you know.
And I think that's what sort of part of the context that's missing from this 13-second Twitter clip that they're going to be spreading around, right? I think context is important. You know, for example, spitting in somebody's coffee is not a cool thing to do, but if the coffee that you're spitting in is owned by a cop per se, you know, maybe you can justify it. Sorry for the interruption there. Again, OBS seems to be doing the same thing Discord is, trying to stop this podcast. I really do not understand why these companies are so afraid of the truth. But to get back to what we were talking about, this Dunkin' Donuts employee was arrested because he just spit in a cop's coffee cup. I mean, what's the big deal about that? It's just a little spittle. I don't know why this cop is being such a big baby about it.
It's an attack on that employee's freedom of expression.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, what's the difference between spitting in a cop's coffee cup and, let's say, posting something on your Facebook wall? Or writing on a wedding cake.
Yeah, I mean, these conservatives, they go off about free speech. Well, this was an act of free speech.
Yeah, it was an act of free speech.
And I have no doubt that the Supreme Court would uphold this.
Mm-hmm. And do you want to hear what they ended up charging the guy with? Because I think that's truly abhorrent. They charged the guy with...
I almost don't want to know, but yeah, go ahead.
Disorderly conduct, reckless conduct, and battery of a police officer.
There was nothing reckless about that. That was an act of bravery.
Exactly,
it was stunning and heroic.
Doing. Yeah, reckless. Come on.
Reckless. And battery on a police officer? I mean, what happened to the cop? I mean, he had a little spittle in his coffee. Like, do you know how many times, as a journalist, I've rolled up to a diner...
I bet that guy eats hot dogs.
Yeah,
I bet he eats hot dogs.
Probably does. Do you know how many times as a journalist I've rolled up to a diner and found a little spit in my coffee? It happens. People do it because I guess they're afraid of the opinions I espouse. It happens, but I don't make a big deal out of it. But the other thing is, I can't make a big deal because I'm not a police officer who has full control over the law. I mean, it's grotesque. And this guy, I just want you guys to all see this guy's face. He's a hero. I mean, if there was ever a man who stood for what he believed in, it's Vincent. It's Vincent J. You know, he's really a hero, and I think he should be lauded. He's punching up, and I think when you punch up, it's justified. Because how else are we supposed to really affect these people in power if we don't have punch up once in a while?
That cop should have drank the spit and thought to himself how he should have been less racist and he should depart from racist institutions.
I mean,
this could have been a learning experience for everyone, and instead it was just another opportunity for fascism.
Yeah,
exactly.
If somebody spits in your coffee, like that should be sign one that you're in the wrong profession.
I think not necessarily. I think that it should be a sign that you need to pause and reflect as to why that person is spitting into your coffee.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, the kid who spit in the cop's coffee cup was just a kid. But we can't always give people a pass for that because you see kids do terrible things. For example, the people who hacked the Twitter, the recent Twitter hack, I'm sure you guys saw it with the Bitcoin, was a 17-year-old kid, but he still needs to be held responsible in my opinion. I mean, Lindsey, you do a fair bit of stuff on Twitter. Are you afraid for the safety of your Twitter account?
I mean, yes and no. I think the check marks were disproportionately affected by that. And for some reason, I don't have a check mark yet. I have Andy looking into that for me, or I had him looking into that for me. Yeah, Twitter recently took away his check mark.
Yeah.
Andy.
Now it seems like a bad time to have a check mark, though.
Yeah, I mean, but without explanation. So we're still looking into that. You know, I feel like they're more after the high-profile people. I'm not entirely sure. I feel comfortable on the one hand that Twitter itself is not going to come after me. I don't know why they took away Andy's check mark, to be honest. But I have not experienced personally any of this, so-called censorship that people talk about, and most of it's probably just a myth. Some of it might be real, but I think it's more nuanced than people want to admit. Like when you have people, as we discussed earlier with the doctored videos of Nancy Pelosi, when you have people putting out like overtly fake videos, or memes as they like to call them, I think that some measures are absolutely justified. So that censorship is probably real, but the other stuff about banning people simply for having the wrong political opinions or following the wrong account, these mass purges that they talk about, I think that's just a conspiracy theory.
I was gonna say that
the shadow banning, yeah.
That reeks of tinfoil hat stuff.
Part of me really wishes it was real. I think these people should absolutely be purged from Twitter. They don't belong there. They have incredibly hateful beliefs, and it does not belong in places where it's obviously the wise
actually going on. That means
of course, but it should happen in my belief.
It should happen, but it's not happening.
Yeah, if anything, it's pretty obvious Twitter is not taking the steps it needs to secure its platform. For one, I mean, $100,000 was donated in Bitcoin towards these sort of these teenage hackers. I mean, what should Twitter be financially responsible for all the money these people lost? I mean, the disproportionate amount of people who sent money to these hackers were people who were in financial troubles, because that was the whole sort of gambit, of the tweets that they ran, where it was, hi, I'm Obama. If you're in financial trouble, send me $1,000 in Bitcoin and I'll send you back 2,000. I mean, that means the people who sent them money were already in financial troubles. So I feel like Twitter, at the very least, should be financially responsible. I think it needs to be looked at
on a case-by-case basis. I understand that after the accounts were restored by Twitter, there were still a couple of accounts that were not restored for a few days. I believe Donald Trump Jr. was one of them. And I think the other one may have been, what was it, Trump's campaign account? I believe so. Yeah, I think those two accounts were not restored with the others. And it could simply be that there were concerns that the two of them may have been involved. Who knows? But regardless, I think you need to look at this on a case-by-case basis. Certainly, Obama was a victim here. Maybe that's why he got restored before Donald Trump Jr.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting perspective.
We don't know the full story. I don't know if we're ever going to know the full story. I feel like Twitter probably had their reasons for doing that. I just want to put that out there. So possibly if we are going to be looking at criminal charges for these kids.
Before the show,
I think we need to take this stuff into account.
Before the show, Neval had an interesting idea where he thought that perhaps these kids were actually being controlled by possibly the Trump campaign or Russian elements.
My belief is that these children either are operatives either for Russia and obviously for Vladimir Putin, or they are undercover operatives, or as Nancy Pelosi accurately describes them, as unidentified stormtroopers of Trump. So I believe absolutely it was a coordinated attack. The money that could have been stolen could have been used to fund Trump's campaign. So
that actually is an interesting suggestion, because Trump's account wasn't affected by this at all.
Yeah.
And granted, the person who actually handles Trump's account over at Twitter has a security clearance. I mean, we know that, but they could have gotten that security clearance in place. All of those protective measures.
Yeah,
leading up to this,
if they were able to get
2
so
years
many
in advance.
people,
yeah, they may have been planning this for a while.
Yeah, I really think that this is a case where I have trouble believing that 3 kids. I mean, one of them was 22, but still, really a kid, were able to pull something like this off. It just they had to have someone backing them. And possibly even an insider at Twitter. That's what worries me, that they could have an insider at Twitter who sort of helped them out.
I mean, they didn't come after my account, and they didn't come after Andy's account. So, I mean, to be perfectly honest, I'm not all that concerned.
Yeah, I think it's good that we avoided that. I mean, I definitely changed my password after this happened. Because who knows what somebody could do with my account? I mean, the amount of havoc they could wreak I wouldn't want to see that happen to my followers.
Well,
So
I mean, yeah, you're pretty influential at this point.
yeah, I mean,
But like
I
I
have
said
about
before,
100
I'm just an
followers, so I'm
intern,
kind of
and
a big deal.
I'm just an intern, and I know that Andy has a whole security apparatus to his account.
I can imagine the world would be in turmoil if someone like, Joe Biden or Dustin was affected by this.
Joe Biden was affected. You didn't hear Joe Biden?
Seriously?
Yeah, he was one.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
They didn't get
I don't
Dustin.
think I'm going to be able to sleep tonight now.
But I mean, okay, to be fair though, I mean, to put your mind at ease, Neville, Joe Biden had no idea that he was affected.
Yeah,
thank goodness.
That's good.
Yeah,
it's silver lining at least.
I can sleep a little easier now.
Yeah, I don't think he was even told.
Yeah, I think that's good. Something that he probably was told about, and I'm sure you've all heard, is the recent very large explosion in Beirut. I don't know how you say that. Beirut, yeah. This explosion has been marred with controversy. The official story they've released say that it was there was a collection of various explosive materials on the ship, and it was sort of a workplace accident. However, some people aren't so sure about that. I think I land somewhere in the middle. It would make sense that they would have a large amount of material on the ship because of Trump's very aggressive tariffs that he's been working on. I think you could really line this all back up to Trump because
Trump is absolutely responsible.
Have you heard about the
like recently there was other explosions as well, like there was incidents in North Korea, Wuhan, and I believe that these were attacks by the Trump regime on his enemies. I think this was a very, very discreet, organized attack, and I believe that the Trump regime should be held responsible for this.
Yeah, I mean, he's enemies. God, he has a lot of them, and he's the one who makes the enemies. And he's come out, very strongly against oppressed groups like Hezbollah, for instance, who, this most likely was a Hezbollah weapons cache, from what I'm hearing. And he is just vehemently opposed to brown people organizing politically. Yeah, and that's what this is about. I mean, just wait for him to go after more. Yeah.
It really, I mean, it's crazy to me that this is going so much under the radar for so many people. I mean, so many people are willing to believe this bogus story about, this ship's just being filled with like ammonium nitrate and a bunch of other combustible materials like fertilizer. I mean,
fireworks as well.
Fireworks. It really is gross to me how many people are willing to believe this bogus story. And I think, I don't know, I just don't think, I wonder if Trump is trying to control the media in that way, if there's some backdoor deals being made with some of the bigger media outlets to report on him in this way. I mean, I just don't know.
I just think this is about brown people.
I mean,
you know what could have prevented this?
What could have prevented it?
No, I saw a video you made about fireworks, and you were suggesting autism-safe zones. Yeah. Obviously, they were storing these fireworks at the docks near all sorts of people and so on. What could have solved this is if they put those autism-safe zones into effect, and this wouldn't have happened.
I think more than that. This should be the proof that we don't need fireworks. I mean, what have fireworks ever done other than make loud noises, which hurt my ears, be very bright, which hurt my eyes, and make me annoyed? I mean,
I'm sorry, I got to disagree with you on this. I mean, I think that we have a Second Amendment right to fireworks. I mean, fireworks were used when we had the brave anti-fascist warriors go to Cassandra Fairbanks' house. Fireworks have been used against the stormtroopers in Portland. Fireworks have been, effectively used by freedom fighters throughout the past few months. So, I got to disagree with you on that. I think we need fireworks.
Well, if we're going to have fireworks, then I think you need a license for them, because I think the issue is
we're not talking about guns here, okay? I mean, guns, I'm totally with you. A license, if that. I mean, that's a little bit too, I want to say, lenient for my taste. But I mean, fireworks, I mean, come on, we have Second Amendment rights.
I don't know. I think fireworks are much more dangerous than you're giving them credit for. I mean, look at what happened here. I mean,
guns kill people.
Guns kill people. I totally am with you.
Fireworks protect people.
Okay.
I don't know. As someone who suffers from extreme sensory overloads to loud noises, I sleep in fear sometimes when it gets close to events where fireworks are the norm, and they quite frankly terrify me.
Yeah, I believe that my, making sure that I'm happy and that I'm not afraid should be one of the country's top priorities. As as a citizen of the United States of America, I believe the government has that responsibility for me, at least.
I mean, a white man can take out an entire crowd of people with an AR-14. You don't hear stories about white people going around taking out crowds with fireworks. That's all I gotta say.
Okay, I think we can have to agree to disagree on this, but
You're wrong.
okay, that's an opinion to hold.
I think it's best taking this to some other journalists and seeing what the approved opinion we can reach is.
Yeah, we'll have to. I'll default to Lindsey's opinion because even though Lindsey's just an intern, clearly
so you admit
very
that you're
wise.
wrong.
I do admit that I'm wrong, and
Okay.
I shouldn't have disagreed with you. I apologize.
I'll also make the immediate switch to Lindsey's correct opinion.
Okay.
But we do agree that guns are bad. Everyone agrees
Absolutely,
on that?
guns are terrible.
So why would Jake Paul have guns?
Well, there's actually, I think there is, some nuance to be had there. There are some people who are using guns in a more positive way than, say, law enforcement.
Yeah, no, I hadn't really have heard about these like good uses of firearms. Can you tell me more about that?
Are you familiar with the John Brown Gun Club?
No,
I've not heard of them. You'll have to delve into a bit of detail there.
It's a gun club for anti-fascists who use their Second Amendment rights in positive ways. Instead of shooting black and brown people, they're actually protecting them.
That's very progressive.
I just thought guns were always bad, but I never had considered the fact that maybe there are situations where they can be useful.
I mean, I think there's a lot of nuance surrounding the whole Second Amendment rights debate. I think that we need to take into account which group is disproportionately committing crimes and acts of terrorism, which, of course, is white males. In fact, I know that there's been this, I'm not sure if you've heard of Glocks for Pox. It's this initiative to actually arm people of color.
I have an article
while disarming white males. Okay, yeah.
This links back to the license idea that we discussed prior to this, where obviously oppressed, marginalized groups should have these licenses to hold firearms to defend themselves from obviously the oppressors.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good idea.
Yeah, I mean,
but I think the problem with that is, though, you're going to have people on the right who try to argue, well, I mean, if they can get licenses for guns and stuff, why can't they show voter ID, get ID to vote? And that, could be used to actually disenfranchise them and further take away more of their rights.
I think it's a hard road to navigate because on one hand, you want to allow people the personal freedoms, but on the other hand, you want to make sure that they're doing it in a safe way, and that these guns aren't getting into the hands of young white adolescents who are going to use them to commit horrid acts of violence against schools full of people.
We should just give brown people guns, like what Obama did.
Yeah, I really think the issue with the gun issue is mostly in the sort of white, young, adolescent sort of group, especially in males. So
they become radicalized online by YouTube. And
this raises an
interesting
point.
And commit mass shootings.
Going back to what we were saying about the police as well, if we were to take the guns away from the police, I think it'd be obvious that without the use of death machines, they'd find other ways to target and further oppress POCs. Obviously, we saw with George Floyd how he was kneeled to death. So I think that obviously we should just abolish them entirely. That way there would be no further police brutality.
Yeah, I'll put another article up on screen about this, but for sure, abolishing the police should be one of our number one priorities. It's obvious that what have the police ever done that's been good for anyone?
We need to be, I mean, just to be the voice of reason here in moderation. We need to be careful how we go about this. because there are people who are going to have a problem with the idea of abolishing police.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we need to lead into this gently. First, we talk about defunding the police. And then when police get defunded, like what we saw in New York City, what was it, a $1.5 billion cut to police budget? That's when we come out and we say, look, this is not enough. We don't just want to defund the police. We want to completely defund the police, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And without the funding, if we don't fund them at all, then it's pretty much the same as abolishing the police, because, you know, where's the money going to come from? Everything in America is driven by money.
Yeah.
So that's what we got to do. We got to do it incrementally. We just say that we want to abolish. Oh, I'm sorry.
Defund.
We don't say we want to abolish the police.
Mm-hmm.
We just talk about defunding the police, okay? And when they pick some arbitrary amount, that's when we come in and say, not enough. You know, we move on from there.
Yeah, I think the other thing we can do is start to develop more of these CHOP areas, you know, these autonomous zones from the police, to show people sort of the utopia that comes.
Community, that's community policing. What we saw in Chaz was community policing, absolutely.
Yeah, neighborhood, you know, without the racist history that the Neighborhood Watch has. You know, I think community policing is far better than Neighborhood Watch, because it isn't made as a way for people in the community to use their sort of racist tendencies to enact their own personal justices. Instead, it's just about making sure everyone's happy and healthy.
Exactly.
Yeah, and the benefit of community policing, quiet enough, is that the community police, like what we saw in Chaz, will reflect the values of the community on the whole. Mm-hmm. So if you have a community that decides, like, hey, we don't like Nazis, then the community police can just go to the houses of the people who are identified as Nazis and deal with them accordingly. Like what we saw 2 nights ago, was it, in Portland? They're already doing that.
Yeah, the one issue I have with defunding the police and getting rid of them is I have to ask myself, what are we going to do in situations where, let's say, for example, we find out that a big internet star has a large number of firearms and is throwing illegal pandemic parties without sort of a SWAT team to go in and raid them. Like, how do are we able to really band together as a community?
I mean, I think it really, again, it's very nuanced here. It depends on who this person is, you know, and what.
Let's say
obviously,
Jake
we're
Paul.
Talking about. Excuse me, I'm talking. I'm talking. Okay. I think it depends on who this person is. Clearly, we're talking about somebody who has power.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on how they've been using that power. If they've been using it for a good cause, say like being out with the Black Lives Matter protesters and speaking truth to power, then no, I do not want to see them suffer any ill effects whatsoever. I think that we need more of what they're doing. But if we're talking about somebody who's not part of Black Lives Matter, or the Black Lives Matter movement, then I kind of see what you're saying.
Yeah, but I mean, look at the example I'm looking at is a specific example. Recently, Jake Paul had his home in Calabasas raided because he was having these house parties and ended up finding a ton of guns. I actually like Jake Paul, and I know maybe this isn't a popular opinion. I thought that he was kind of cool, but this is just making me totally change my opinion on him.
No, Jake Paul's a toxic white masculine bigot. How could you find someone that cool?
It was like
Obama's cool.
It was a guilty pleasure. Cool. Okay, it was a guilty pleasure. I thought his songs were catchy.
I'm disappointed by this now.
I'm sorry, Neva. I really don't like to disappoint you, but his songs were catchy. His image was attractive. I wanted to be him in a weird way. I think that was some sort of internalized oppression showing. There's something I sort of, he had something that I wanted, but not anymore. Now that he's been, I guess you could say I told you so, Neva, because
I'm shaking right now. I can't believe what I'm hearing.
Again, this goes back. Neville, excuse me.
I'm sorry. I'm just upset right now.
Okay. 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 Norm.
Yeah.
Sorry about Neville and all that. No, but this goes back to what I was saying before. I mean, Jake Paul, he's been a part of the Black Lives Matter movement. I mean, he was peacefully protesting at a mall, and he ended up getting tear gas months ago, I believe, during a peaceful protest at a mall.
I hadn't heard about that.
Wasn't he arrested as well? Yeah, he was taken political prisoner. Wow. So that's why I'm saying there's nuance involved. So, I mean, this is a guy who obviously has power, but he's using it in a good way. So I think that this was probably a political prosecution. Again,
so I don't have to take down my Jake Paul posters?
No.
That's good to hear. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, why else would the FBI be the ones going after this if it wasn't a direct result of the FBI sort of taking Trump's... It feels unlawful to me almost.
They went after somebody else, I believe, who was they're calling him a co-conspirator or something. I haven't really looked into him yet, but I think he has a very Muslim-sounding last name, so he's also a political prisoner.
Interesting. That's really I think it's really grotesque to me that the FBI would raid this Jake Paul's house when clearly all they wanted to do was just take him because of his political beliefs, and they might have implanted the guns for all we know.
Don't worry, Norm. When Joe Biden gets in charge, we won't be seeing this anymore. I'm terribly sorry.
Grown-ups are talking.
Yeah,
I'm terribly sorry.
Sorry. About that, Norm.
It's fine.
No, but as we were saying before, I think that at this point we just need to look at anybody who is remotely associated with any federal agency as one of Trump's stormtroopers. I mean, he's the executive in chief, right? Supposedly. Perhaps not legitimately, but he's in that position of power, and they all do his bidding.
Wow. Well, that's all the current news stories we have right now. But if it's okay with you, Lindsey, if you could just stay on a little longer, I'd have some questions I'd like to ask you. So, Lindsey, NPC Daily, which you interned for, and obviously I understand if you don't want to speak for all of NPC Daily because you just...
I'm perfectly happy speaking for NPC Daily or anyone really.
So, you've been on Facebook for a long time. I saw from your site you have almost 15,000 Facebook fans. How have you experienced sort of censorship on the platform of Facebook, or have you experienced censorship on the platform?
We actually have. That's the remarkable thing. People talk about conservatives being censored on social media. It's just a crazy conspiracy theory. I mean, look, Ben Shapiro is on Facebook. Okay, like, come on, like, please. But personally, witnessed this affecting progressive leftists like myself and like the outlet that I'm now speaking for and represent. And you know that this isn't coming from Mark Zuckerberg. I mean, he's done everything in his power to enable free speech. This is coming from the Trump administration. They have people in there who are unfairly persecuting the free speech of people like me, of progressive outlets like NPC Daily. And it's, whenever they accuse us, the progressive left, of doing something that they themselves are doing, that's fascism.
Yeah.
That's gaslighting. This is a tactic that they use, okay? There is no conservative censorship on Facebook. Once again, Ben Shapiro is on Facebook, okay? If conservatives are being censored on Facebook, if they were having their posts being taken down simply for showing pictures of MAGA hats or expressing the wrong opinions or even, using the words like illegal immigrant, I mean, please, people aren't getting taken down just for that. If that was really happening, why is Ben Shapiro on there? You tell me that.
Yeah, I think more than that,
the
you
people
also see...
who are experiencing censorship are people who are speaking out against Trump. I mean, that's what we mean when we say that this is a fascist totalitarian regime.
Yeah.
He is just, we have no more rights. He's just taking them away.
We talked
with
about
his hackers.
A little earlier in the show about on Facebook. They had the video of Nancy Pelosi, the deepfaked video of her being quote unquote drunk. They didn't take that down, right? If they're going to be censoring right wingers, they would have taken that video down in a second. But instead, they let the video stay up with this placid warning about it being, possibly manipulated media. But no one reads those things.
I know.
It's pretty grotesque.
I think that Mark Zuckerberg definitely means well. He really does, but he's just one person. I mean, they have so many Facebook employees, and I'm sure many, if not most, of these people are in the pay of the Trump campaign, or Russia, which is pretty much the same thing. I feel for Mark Zuckerberg. I mean, he really wants to do the right thing. He does. Jack Dorsey does. But they're in a tight position because they're being undermined, being infiltrated by Russia and their operatives.
Yeah.
Lindsey, we've spoke about this many times about your aspirations and desires to work in Congress at some point. What kind of persons of Congress have inspired you?
Well, I mean, there's quite a list, to be perfectly honest. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, as you well know, I know, but you have a big crush on her.
I know, I can't control it.
I know, I can't blame you. Ilhan Omar, absolutely. I mean, just seeing just the progressiveness of her, it leaves me in awe, and I feel it deep down in my bones whenever I see racist, Islamophobic, sexist attacks on her, simply for expressing her opinions on Israel. Yeah. So AOC, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, she just won her primary.
So if
the other one, they're also the other one. The other one.
Oh yeah, the other one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The other one.
Yeah.
The other one. So yeah, those are the four that have really inspired me to want to become a member of Congress.
So if you were actually to make it in Congress, what would your sort of day one look like? Like, what are the things that you'd want to change about this country?
I think that there are a lot of things that could stand to be changed. I think right now the most pressing issue that we are facing is racism. Okay, I mean there's no question about that. I don't like it, Norm. I really don't. I think it should be banned. And if I were in Congress, I would absolutely want to introduce legislation banning racism. I also don't like misogyny. I'm seeing all of these attacks from right-wingers, from males, against the women of Congress. And I don't like it. I think that we need to do more to combat misogyny. And I absolutely would introduce a bill to ban misogyny altogether. The other things I don't like ageism, ableism, I think those should be banned as well. Hate speech absolutely is just a vehicle to promote violence against women and minorities, and I think that's something that needs to actually be more aggressively policed than it already is. We don't actually have any formal federal laws stopping people from using hate speech words in any form whatsoever. So I would introduce a bill to criminalize hate speech. I mean,
what about
when you get down? Quiet, Neville. I'm talking. Okay. I mean, when you get down to it, what is the difference between hate speech and a hate crime? I mean, hate speech is a hate crime. It's just a verbal hate crime. Words are quite literally violence.
Wow.
So yeah, I would introduce day one. I'd have my hate speech bill ready. I'd have my racism bill ready. I'd have my misogyny bill ready. Maybe later in the week, I'd introduce something to ban ageism and ableism. I mean, and I think I'm making it sound somewhat simplistic, but you have to keep in mind that whenever you write a bill, it's going to be thousands of pages long.
Wow.
So there are plenty of other things that I could put in each of these bills to, further define them. Like I'd absolutely ban certain right-wing groups from existing, under the racism bill.
Mm-hmm.
I would probably shut down most gaming communities under the misogyny bill.
Wow.
And places like 4chan as well.
Oh, 4chan, yeah. I mean, that could go under either the misogyny bill. Certainly the hate speech bill. I mean, yeah. So I mean, there are a lot of things that I really want to do, and I absolutely plan to run for Congress when I'm old enough.
Would you do anything to address systemic gernophobia that's been absolutely rampant under the Trump regime?
I just said racism. Are you not paying attention?
Yeah, Neva, please. Let's not waste Lindsey's time.
Yeah,
I'm terribly sorry. I was just thinking about how oppressed journalists are.
Yes, I said racism already. I'm really sorry about that interruption, Norm.
It's fine.
He does that sometimes.
So, Lindsey, in this very dangerous, this heavily partisan climate we've got going on here, how do you know who to trust?
That's actually a really good question. I'm glad you asked that, Neville. Have you heard of Journalist Excellence Worldwide? I'm sure you have.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very closely tied in with that.
Yes, it's the world's premier journalism advocacy group. They speak for journalist rights, but they're also a certification agency. And they are able to determine who is an approved journalist and who's not. Basically, if you want to know if you should be following somebody on Twitter, if you should be listening to their opinions, check with Journalist Excellence Worldwide. They make it very clear who is approved and who is not approved. If you'd like, I can go through some of the certified outlets, the ones that you can absolutely trust. There is, of course, CNN. It's, as they say, the most trusted name in news. You can't get any more trusted than that. There's, NPC Daily, which I, of course, work for without pay. And there's MSNBC. They were really, really great about the Russiagate conspiracy. I mean, they were absolutely on top of that every step of the way. Rachel Maddow in particular. I
love her.
There's also, it's not quite as mainstream, but they do good work. The Palmer Report. Let's see. Oh, the New York Times and the Washington Post. They have gotten, New York Times especially, their journalism as of late has just been fantastic. They've been purging some of the old holdovers from, when journalism was basically shilling with the right-wingers. Mm-hmm. And they've been expressing more and more progressive opinions. Washington Post, they as well are particularly good at reporting on matters in dealing with Congress.
Yeah.
Because they are so closely associated with Adam Schiff's staff. So they're always right on top of things. They always know exactly what to say. Mm-hmm. But yeah, if you just check out Journalist Excellence Worldwide, if you're ever curious as to what you should or should not be looking at, they're the number one go-to source.
Wow, thank you so much. Obviously,
you're welcome.
I really appreciate you being able to come on it because you're so hyper intelligent and you're so aware of sort of what's going on.
I am.
With this sort of your scry, if you could for me, could you scry and figure out what is the 2020 election going to look like compared to the 2016 election? I mean, would we even be able to survive 4 more years of Trump if he were to win?
I mean, I think what the 2020 election is going to look like is not, too different from the 2016 election. Trump is going to do everything he can to steal it again. We're going to have widespread Russian interference, as we are already, except now they're trying to, blame the Chinese or blame mail-in voting, the idea of mail-in voting, to make it more inclusive, more available to minorities. Basically, we're going to see the same thing. He's just going to be, pulling every punch that he possibly can to steal another election. There's nothing he will not stoop to.
Wow. And thank you so much for coming on here. I really do appreciate it.
I just feel like the only thing that we could really do right now, besides widespread mail-in voting, is to impeach him again. Really, impeach the motherfucker.
Yeah, we got to get. Well, let's see if we can get Nancy on that, because really, I can't believe we lost the first one, but I think a second round we're definitely going to come out ahead. But again, Lindsey, thank you so much for coming on here. We really do appreciate.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your time, cousin.
And
you're welcome, Neville.
And people can find your work on NBCDaily.com. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, I'm just an intern, but I'm a very very valuable intern.
So that would be the place to check out.
Really, you know. Yeah, without me, none of this would be possible. Same with Journalist Excellence Worldwide. If it weren't for me, I mean, that wouldn't be around either. I'm pretty much the backbone of the entire approved journalism community, and you know, it's about time that people started recognizing that. Absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you again for coming.
Dustin would be nothing without me. You hear that, Dustin? You'd be nothing without me.
We'll have Dustin on here to give his response to that another time.
Dustin owes me everything.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, thank you for coming. You're
welcome.
The next segment, we're going to talk about some additional news stories which didn't make it into the recent news, but we still want to discuss. But that will be with me and Neville. I'll see you there in a minute. And all of these stories came out recently. However, they're stories that we really feel need to be discussed, and they're voices that we really want to amplify. So to get us started, we have a Guardian article here where there's been a rise in neo-Nazis who have been sort of charged with harassing journalists, and also they harass like cabinet members. But I think the journalists is what we want to focus on, don't we? I mean,
absolutely, yes.
It's really
recently there's been a surge of. Go ahead, comrade.
I was just going to say it's really just the most blatant example of journophobia that we've seen in the media.
No, exactly. Like, there's been a horrific surge of journophobic attacks, cyber assaults against journalists, all that kind of horrific stuff. And particularly seeing the rise of neo-Nazis doing this, particularly young neo-Nazis, which is equally kind of startling and terrifying.
It's sad.
These young children being brainwashed by Trump. It's terrible. It's like my 12-year-old cousin turned out to be a Trump supporter, and I nearly passed out. I was mortified.
I don't even know what I would do.
I couldn't believe the horrific stuff he was saying.
And
you want to know what he said to me?
Well, let's hear it. Trigger warning. First off, trigger warning. Okay, go ahead.
He said to me, first of all, he called me uncle, which is terrifying. I mean, uncle?
You're not
I prefer a more gender neutral phrase. And he said, when are they going to build the wall? And that point it hit me. I was shaking.
That's a powerful story, and I'm really sorry they had to go through this. And I think we firsthand know the effects that this sort of rise in neo-Nazism has had on journalists. I mean, how often do our Discord servers get raided, and do we get attacked for?
Oh, every day.
Every day. It's gross, you know. And there's also been a rise in attacks of LatinX folks too. These often are more physical, not online. The example we have here is from a CNN article, where this was in a couple of years ago, but this lady had purposely driven over a Latinx person because they were quote unquote Mexican. I mean, who do you think she voted for in 2016?
Oh, absolutely, the evil orange tyrant.
Yeah, it's just, I think we need to take a serious look at how we license people to drive a car, because I feel like more and more we're seeing people use cars as like a vehicle for hate and a vehicle to mow down these innocent people. Like, how can we let Trump supporters even drive cars at this point?
I think that cars altogether are very problematic. I mean, obviously with global warming going on, I think that the government should limit the amount of cars on the road, significantly.
Drastically limit the amount of cars on the road, and make sure that people who drive in cars have good intentions, right?
Exactly. I think that you should be an approved person to drive them, so people in oppressed groups who desperately need them. So white people who occupy the highest position in societal hierarchies, they don't need cars. Why would they? They are the oppressors. They don't need a vehicle of hatred. So ideally, they should be restricted in the number of cars they have and use.
Yeah, I really think that obviously we got to deal with the gun thing first, right? Like Lindsey was saying earlier on the show, we need to make sure that the guns are only in the hands of people who can be trusted. But next is cars.
Absolutely.
Think by far, that it's just another tool that's being used to promote this sort of hate. But
cars as well, they're almost as bad as cow farts.
Yeah, I mean, as far
contribution to global warming.
Exactly. The amount of carbon dioxide that's being released from these hunks of junk it's insane. I think seriously, cars are going to be the next big battlefield as far as progressing us forward. But I think something we also need to consider is who should be having these conversations. Obviously, both of us identify as raceless, so we're going to talk about them. But certain folks, particularly white folks, have sort of tried to derail the conversation and make a lot of this stuff about them. I mean, you see this a lot with the BLM, and I think black people have just had enough of it.
Absolutely, this is where intersectionalism comes into it. I understand that the white Antifa affiliates, activists, BLM, all those kind of sorts, they may have good intentions, but at the end of the day, this is about people of color. Yeah, this isn't about them.
It isn't.
It's like a hostile takeover. Well, not a hostile one. They do mean well, ultimately. But by coming in and displacing voices that should be POC voices, they're bringing more harm than good.
Yeah, for sure they're bringing more harm than good. And it's also, to me at least, it seems like some of them are doing it for their own benefit. Like all the time you'll see these stories of people who they make the protests about them. Like, so they support BLM, that's great. But they put it in their Twitter bio so that other people will give them points. When in reality, this movement's about, black and brown people, about POCs, not about white people who, feel sorry for themselves.
Ideally, white people just need to shut up and let the POCs deal with this horrific situation.
And just to make one thing straight, I said it a little earlier, but we are raceless. Both me and Neville are raceless peoples. So please don't come at us in the comments saying, "Oh, but you're a white person," because first off, that's rude and incorrect. Neither of us are white.
Oh, I've had very, very sickening attacks, particularly on Discord, where I've had people message me in DMs and even in the channels and so on in the anti-bullying server, call me a white male. I mean, yes, I did identify as one before I transitioned.
But at this point, you couldn't be. You're nowhere close to a white male. I mean, you're so far from it.
And yet these people have the audacity to attack and harass me by calling me a white male. I mean, it got so bad that I couldn't sleep at night. I was just laying in bed crying, and it was just really hard. It was very difficult, a very difficult experience.
Yeah, it is a difficult experience. But do you know what? You know what isn't a difficult experience? People try to overblow the whole mask thing. Like, wearing a mask isn't going to make it harder for you to breathe. Stop being a baby. Why do you think people have such an issue wearing masks?
Oh, that's a very good question. I think it's a case of this particularly comes from older white male Trump supporters who feel it's an infringement on their rights. Well, in actuality, it's just their white male privilege coming out to play. And they believe it's acceptable to go around coughing and sneezing on everyone just because they think that they own the place.
Yeah, it's grotesque, but at least the government is taking some steps to improve on this situation. I mean, there's a recent thing that's come out where Deborah is sort of Burks is saying that we should add face shields in as well as masks because obviously we're not safe enough already. Clearly, the coronavirus has still been spreading even with mask policies in place. So she wants to make it compulsory to have to wear face shields as well. What do you think about that?
Oh, I think it's absolutely necessary. Sometimes what I do, I get 2 large sticks, just kind of like tie them to my shoulders or my head, and obviously spread apart at 2 meters each side.
Oh.
So that way people know not to invade my personal space and so on. And if anyone does, obviously I'll get my phone out, record them, and so on. I've managed to get about, let's say, I'd say about 20 odd people so far do that, and I've got it all on film, so that those hate bigots know now not to do that. And I have sent that information to the police as well.
Yeah, I think we also need to think: are these face shields going to be enough? Maybe we need to start.
Oh, absolutely not. No,
goggles,
I believe hazmat suits.
Hazmats, yeah, gloves. I mean, why does it really never end? I think really, however covered in stuff I need to be safe, I'm gonna do it. I mean, if I have to be in a plastic bubble to save myself the coronavirus, I'm willing to do that. You know, but I also wonder, are they gonna make cute face shields? Because I know, like, sadly we don't have your video working right now, but you have your cute NPC daily mask, right?
Yes.
You think they're gonna have similar stuff for face shields?
Oh, I hope so. We can get approved journalist face shields, but this brings up a good point as well. We need to do more to protect journalists from the coronavirus, or the Trump virus, as we should call it.
Yeah, the Trump virus. Yeah,
I mean, ordinary people, they don't matter as much as journalists. They should be going out of their way to make sure that we are safe.
Yeah, and I think obviously we're like the keepers of knowledge, right? And historically, the keepers of knowledge have always been the sort of the ones that are being protected by the community. But I just don't think that's translated into the modern era.
No.
It hasn't. And you know, I also wonder, like, completely unrelated, are these face shields going to protect against tear gas? I'm just asking for a friend. What do you think? I mean, would it work?
It's possible. I'd have to use one to find out.
Yeah. I mean, I also think, let's not forget, Biden has been rocking the mask on Twitter for a while. Do you think he's going to change his profile picture to include a face shield? Because I think that might just be sexy
if he does
overload.
that, I think I'll have a massive fan overload.
Yeah, it would be too much. I mean, he's already
just imagine Biden wearing a face shield. Imagine how empowering that would be. If Joe Biden did that, I'm sure that many people would look at this example and start doing it themselves.
Yeah,
there's just no one as inspiring as Joe Biden. I'm so sorry. I'm overwhelmed right now.
No, it's understandable. I get that way around Biden too. And you know, the only thing I can think to do when I get those feelings about Biden is just to sort of take it slow and try to relax myself. You know. And this is a terrible segue, but Black Lives Matter people should be allowed to block traffic. That's just a fact.
Oh, yes. And
so, yeah, there's been protesters who have stopped traffic a couple of times. You know, this one's talking about a case on FDR Drive. You could name a street, and sure, there's been Black Lives Matter protesters who have blocked traffic on it, but it's for a good cause, right?
I mean, you look at people driving. Yeah, they might be going to work. They might be seeing a relative, something like that. They might have important business to attend to. But at the end of the day, it is nowhere near as important as the struggle for racial and systemic equality.
For sure. And I feel, and this is my deepest sympathies for the folks who have been hurt blocking traffic. I mean, obviously, there's the very famous case of the young lady, or the young person, I should say, who passed. And we feel for those affected.
Absolutely.
And
I have no doubt that it was a white male Trump supporter who did it.
I'll put it to you this way: they were driving a Jaguar. What does that say?
Oh, that spells to me as some sort of despicable bigot belching all that carbon into the atmosphere.
Just absolutely no disregard for the people involved. But
I feel just sick hearing about this.
It really is saddening. But if you need something to lift your spirits, and I know this might seem weird to you guys, but we have been known to play a video game from time to time. I know people think, oh, journalism excellence worldwide, anti-gaming, but that's not the case. In fact, we actually support games that have strong female characters or strong POC characters. We support games that are sort of ethical, and
like The Last of Us 2.
like The Last of Us 2. And obviously, we've done articles about this. There's an approved gaming list out. All that stuff will be in the description below for you guys if you want to know more about that. But on the topic of approved games, Beyond Good and Evil is actually at the top of the list. Beyond Good and Evil is an amazing game. It features a POC main character who's also a woman, who also, believe it or not, I don't know if you know this, Neval, is a journalist.
Seriously? A game where there's a journalist protagonist who's also a POC woman?
And she's non-violent, and she sort of explores this world, and it's an amazing game, and I really suggest everyone plays it. But
I'm going to have to pick up a copy of this.
More good news, this has just been announced. There's going to be a movie adaptation for Netflix. This is on a must-watch list for sure. You know, I mean, I have the image up on screen, Neva. You can't really see it, but you just see a lovely, strong POC woman here, and she, you know, it's just an amazing thing that Netflix would finally. You know, I've had problems with them in the past, where they canceled my subscription unlawfully, but I think I'm going to have to re-up my subscription to see this show when it comes out.
You can't see me right now, Norm, but I'm presently doing jazz hands to celebrate this momentous occasion.
Yeah, I think we all are, and we all really. I'll do it for you. Some jazz hands. It's awesome. I'm really excited to announce this. So everyone, make sure to re-up your Netflix subscriptions just to see this when it comes out.
But I can't wait to watch it.
I can't either.
Okay, in this section of the podcast, we're going to do a debate. So on the one hand here, we've got an approved journalist, being Norm, and on the other hand, we have our guest, Jeremy. Jeremy was found on our Discord server and is a fascist and a bad actor.
Excuse you.
Hey, Jeremy, can you just let
Jeremy, please, come on.
Let Neva,
We've just brought you on.
Let Neva speak, please.
So, without further ado, let's go on to the very first question. So, starting with Norm, of course, because Norm is an approved journalist. How should schools handle the reopening?
Well, I think it's a really complicated question. I think schools should make an action plan to start to move their classes online now so that they can sort of maintain online classes throughout the beginning of the next semester. And I think we really just need to keep kids out of schools and out of these public places as long as possible.
Okay, that's interesting. Jeremy, what do your hate opinions think about this?
Well, I think the schools should be open. They should be open all the time. They should be open at the usual time that they open up. You know, for us, it's like the beginning of September. They should be open. Like, I don't understand why they even closed down. They should.
Well, they closed down because of the coronavirus.
Jeremy, please, you're interrupting.
I understand that, but I mean, Corona's
Jeremy,
yeah.
You're interrupting.
I mean, it's obvious. It's obvious, Jeremy. The reason they had to close down is because COVID-19. I mean, you hear about it in the news before, Jeremy?
Well, yeah, I've heard about it, but it's all fake.
Are you accusing the media of being fake, Jeremy?
Exactly.
We don't. Hey, Jeremy, that's
we don't allow germophobic hate opinions on here. You're gonna have to tone that down.
I want to just I just want to address the audience for a second.
I mean, I'm here for a debate.
Jeremy, you're interrupting an approved journalist.
I'm trying to address the audience. Okay, guys. I want to get this clear. The coronavirus is real. Okay, Jeremy, continue with your hate opinion.
All right. Well, the schools, they should move them during.
Okay, on to the next question here now.
All right.
Okay.
The
next question?
Question 2. Starting with Norm again.
Okay, thank you.
Will wearing additional masks and goggles be of help?
Yeah, I believe the media, and we showed articles about this earlier on. I think the more masks we have, the less problems we're going to have. I think if we have to have a hazmat suit, we should have a hazmat suit. What about you, Jeremy? Yeah. You got a problem with that?
Like a goddamn astronaut. You're going to look like a astronaut wearing those things.
Okay, well, let me hear your
Jeremy,
stance,
now you're being insulting.
Let me hear yours. No ad hominems. Let's hear your stance.
The government, they're infringing on our freedoms, and they're forcing us to wear masks in the first place. I can't breathe in those things. Like, How is anyone able to breathe? Come on now.
What are you, a baby,
Like,
Jeremy?
they don't even work. What's the point of them?
Are you a little baby? It's
I'm
not.
not a baby.
Jeremy, you wearing a mask does not make it hard to breathe. If you are an adult human, it shouldn't be a problem for you, Jeremy. I don't know why you're having such an issue.
If it covers your mouth and your nose, it makes it very difficult to breathe.
Jeremy, that's just false. I mean, okay, let's get it. Neva, can you fact check that for us? Is it hard to breathe with the mask on?
Okay, let me just fact check that for a moment. Put mine on.
Oh, let's see what the fact check Neva here. Well, Jeremy,
okay,
just wait while we get this done. Is it hard to breathe, Neva?
All right, I'll put mine on. I can
work?
breathe perfectly fine. I believe that Jeremy is completely
Jeremy,
false and biased here. He's just fed into Trump's violent and aggressive rhetoric.
Did you ask if the mask even work? Of course the masks work.
I don't even. They don't even work.
Of course they work. They stop the virus. I mean,
how?
This is like how? Like it physically. It's a physical
he's
barrier.
sea lining now, Jeremy. He's sea lining.
He's sea lining.
Okay.
Jeremy,
that's what you guys always say.
Let's just get to the third question, okay? You're wasting our time here.
Honestly, the sooner Jeremy's off the show, like the better. I'm just shocked right now. All right, moving on. Question 3.
Ridiculous.
Jeremy, I'm speaking here. You're interrupting an approved journalist. Question 3. Do you believe the government is telling us the whole truth about the Trump virus?
Well, that's a hard one, Neval. Trump sucks, and he's definitely lying about some things. But I imagine the numbers are probably higher than they're telling us. And, things could really be worse.
Jeremy?
See, well, the government sucks. And I mean, they're definitely lying. They lie about literally everything. And I manage the numbers are way lower than what they're actually supposed to be. Because if you look at it, if you actually think about it, they pretty much add in the numbers of like people who die. They just add in the numbers. They're just like, oh yeah, they probably added COVID. Yeah, they died from COVID. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, okay.
Wait, did you say the numbers would be lower than?
They'd be way lower.
No, I mean I agree with you. The government lies. I think that we can at least agree on. The government is lying to us in some extent, but it's because of Trump that they're lying. First off, second off, there's definitely more COVID deaths than they're telling us. I mean,
no, it's probably way lower. But it's not a problem at all.
If the death count was so low, why would people be making such a big deal about it?
You tell me. I don't know. They're probably covering up all sorts of crazy things, like Hillary Clinton's emails and all sorts of, whatever.
Well, stop attacking women.
Yeah. Why do you have to bring Hillary into this? We're not even talking about her right now. You have you have like 2 arguments, Cher.
Yeah, well, it's they lie about everything. So they just kind of they lie about everything and they cover something else up every single time.
Jeremy, you're such a conspiracy theorist. I mean, I presented the really well approved fact that Trump is a liar, and you come in here saying that like the Democratic Party and stuff is lying to you, which they aren't, right? I mean, please stop committing libel on my show. And mine and Neva's show. I don't appreciate that, Jeremy.
Right. Yes.
Jeez. Okay. Well, I think we can wrap that up. Despite Jeremy's placid performance, it might have been a productive debate.
If you could see me, I'm shaking my head at you.
You know what, Jeremy? I don't want to hear your sass. Okay. Everyone just vote in the straw poll. They'll be linked below, and it will be on the Twitter too. Just say who you thought wins. If Jeremy wins, I guess we'll shout him out or something. But I don't think he's going to win because he presented no arguments. Jeremy.
Oh, can we cut out that Trump 2020 part as well? I don't want Jeremy radicalizing the viewers.
Yeah, okay. I'll see if I can bleep that. We'll put a bleep over that. Jeremy, I hate to have to say this, but it's...
You're going to censor me?
You know what, Jeremy?
Censor me?
It's not censorship. It's editing. Jeremy, I hate to have to say this, but I will say thank you for coming. Your presence was not appreciated, but thank you for coming anyway.
Wow. All right. Well, I guess we'll just see. Your viewers will obviously vote for me. So, you know.
Well, but that's where you're wrong, bigot.
Yeah, our viewers are smarter than that. So we'll get to the results from the straw poll in the next episode. So just stay tuned for that.
All right. I'll look forward to it.
Okay. Well, I hope you look forward to losing, Jeremy. Let's
We
get to the
hope
next
you
segment.
take the time to educate yourself after this encounter.
Please do.
All right. I hope you do the same.
So I really do apologize for that last segment. We had no idea Jeremy was such a radical alt-right troll, and we did not know that he was going to say those things, so we do apologize. But on the topic of alt-right trolls, we come to our last segment of the show, Trump Watch. This, again, will be a segment where we tell you all the Trump news that you need to hear about so we can sort of keep an eye on the fellow to make sure he isn't doing anything too crazy. Let's get it just going with the first article, which is about women who are going away from Trump and going over to Biden. What are your thoughts on this one, Nev?
Oh, this is a very big kind of thing. It's a very good thing that you brought it up.
Mm-hmm.
It's like an exodus almost. We've seen
Yeah.
a lot of women moving away from the orange bigot towards Joe Biden, who is on his way to becoming America's savior. And it's a very beautiful thing to see. And it begs the question, why are women attracted to Joe Biden?
I think some of it might be sexual, to be brutally honest.
No doubt about that.
He's a powerhouse of a man, and Trump is grotesque. Even I heard a very funny female comedian, Eliza Schlesinger, say this, where as Trump as a man, even his supporters have to admit that he's not an attractive man. Right? I think no one is.
Absolutely.
No one is attracted to Trump, but a lot of people actually are attracted to Joe. And I think the question we have to ask about this is, with that being the case, why did women vote for Trump in 2016?
I think it was a case of internalized misogyny.
Yeah,
I see no other reason for why Hillary lost.
I think that's definitely part of it. I think we might have also seen, there might have been some cases, and sorry, trigger warning here, of maybe spousal abuse, where the sort of men would force their wives to vote for Trump. Because I really could not see a reason why any woman would ever really want to vote for Trump. It's just, he's the antithesis of a woman. All he wants to do is take away their rights. It's grotesque to me.
I recommend watching Anna Kasparian from the Young Turks video about that. She called out these Trump supporting women for what they were, idiots.
Yeah, I definitely will have to check that out. I think another thing that I find interesting on the Trump watch is that Trump might be trying to delay the election. I don't know if you've seen anything about this, Nival, but he keeps on pushing for delaying the election because of concerns over quote-unquote mail-in voting, which, by the way, Trump used mail-in voting. But do you think that this is even something that he would do?
Oh, absolutely. Let's face it, he's afraid of Joe Biden.
Mm-hmm.
So it's to a point now where he doesn't believe he can beat Joe Biden. So he's trying to cling on to power for as long as he can. And it's sad. It's really pathetic.
Yeah, it is pathetic. And also it's unconstitutional. Congress is, experts have already ruled that only the Congress has the power to delay the election. And it's like, I don't know how we could be so dumb to try to openly, go against Congress on this and go against the rule of law. I mean, this would be the first steps of a dictator, I think. Delaying the election.
Absolutely.
And even his Republican allies have openly challenged Trump on the sort of discussion of delaying the election. I mean, no one wants this except for Trump. But do you think if he actually pulled it off, I mean, where would democracy even be?
It wouldn't exist. Who else didn't like elections?
Who?
Hitler.
You're right.
This just goes to show. It just goes to show that Trump is essentially the next Hitler. I mean, I've been saying it for years now, and this is just the proof right here.
It really is. The one good thing about a Trump delaying the election, this isn't going to go his way, is that if the election actually does get delayed, do you know who becomes president?
Who?
It's Nancy Pelosi. As the Speaker of the House.
The first female president.
Yes, as Speaker of the House, if the election becomes delayed, Nancy Pelosi actually takes control. So maybe we should let Trump delay the election, because I would love President Pelosi. In fact, this actually trended on Twitter recently. It truly is the only good thing that could come out of this. The other thing I saw on Twitter recently was Elizabeth Warren was tweeting about this. Apparently, Trump has secret police. Stormtroopers.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. The unidentified stormtroopers that we previously discussed. I mean, it's scary. I mean, sometimes I just kind of I look out my windows in panic, just wondering if anyone's going to
come get you. I mean, and they might. That's the scary part. They might just out of the blue come and grab you for no good reason. I mean, who knows? Lindsey had tweeted recently about she was worried, as when I cut off in the show earlier, that perhaps the secret police had come for me. And I mean, luckily they didn't, and we were okay. But it's a worrying world to live in, for sure, especially as somebody who loves democracy.
Exactly, yes. I mean, it's scary. It truly is. I mean, imagine just being kidnapped just for being a journalist.
Yeah, it's grotesque. And our last story of the night is on Bloomberg. It is about Trump deciding that he wants to ban TikTok, and it's very it's a very sad story, because TikTok has actually been used by a lot of teenagers to sort of fight against Trump's hatred. I don't know if you've seen the anti-Trump movement on TikTok, but it's alive and well. It really is. The only thing that's really screwy about this is that all these TikTok voters are actually below the voting age, mostly. So
that's why we need to lower it.
We need to lower it, because otherwise there's no repercussions for Trump taking such aggressive action against these kids.
This just goes to show how America's fostered and allowed systemic ageism to truly infect its society.
Yeah, but most TikTok is mostly kids. However, there are actually a few sort of TikTok users who are over the age of 18, believe it or not. And those people are definitely not going to be voting for Trump in the next election. I think that's obvious.
I mean, your average TikToker, however old they might be, I don't know, they're probably smarter than your average Trump supporter. By that default, they should be allowed to vote and even take the place of a Trump supporter again.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting idea, having aptitude tests required before you vote. I think that's a very smart idea. And
having someone like Journalist Excellence Worldwide facilitate those tests as well.
Yeah, if we could manage to get a hold of that contract, I think that'd be a very sort of smart move on the government's part, in my opinion. But sadly, that's the last story of today. I'd really like to thank everyone for coming to this very special occasion, this first NNN News podcast. We're just going to briefly, in closing, give a summary of some of the things we talked about. I think we've debated about this too, the school opening. I think the conclusion that we've arrived at, and correct me if I'm wrong, Neva, is that schools shouldn't be opened. Don't you think?
Oh, yes.
And obviously, the other thing is, to help with the COVID virus, people need to wear a mask or wear whatever the government tells them that's going to stop the COVID, because otherwise we're never going to make it through this as a country. And
preferably a face shield now.
Yeah, and the only time I would tell people to defy the government is if Trump ends up installing himself as God King, which might happen, sadly. It's looking like he's trying to. So just keep an eye out for that. And this is sort of, I think, why the government needs to support Black Lives Matter and make laws that allow them to do these sort of protests where they block traffic. Because at the moment, they're just sort of, they're being kicked around by the government, and they need more representation. And the last thing I want to say is Biden's not racist. Stop calling Biden racist. He's not racist.
Stop attacking Joe Biden. Joe Biden is a hero.
He's
Respect
a hero.
him.
Please give some respect to your future president, Joe Biden. But that's all we really talked about on the show.
I'd like to add as well, Jeremy, if you're watching this, you're a fascist.
Yeah.
Don't you dare come and try and ruin our show again.
Screw you, Jeremy. But thank
we will
you,
report
Lindsey.
you to the police if you do that again.
But thank you, Lindsey, for coming on the show. We really appreciate having you. Make sure to subscribe to the Twitter, subscribe to the channel to see when we upload the next week's episode. We really appreciate you all taking the time to watch this video. We'll see you later. Goodbye.
Take care, comrades.
Take care.